Okay. All right. So the purpose of this sync meeting is to typically get up to speed on all the pages efforts that we have ongoing and to make sure that we're all facing the same direction. Recently, we've added somebody from scalability to the object storage effort, and it's blown up the scope in a different direction. And I'm struggling a little bit with like sequencing and what we're supposed to be doing, and actually understanding also like the technical work. So I'm hoping that I can get a little bit of an overview on what we're looking to do technically, because I do get pulled into these meetings and I'm expected to surface like what actually are we changing and doing, and how does this impact our instrumentation of pages for customers. So I need to be able to competently discuss like what we're planning on doing in the next couple of months and how that will help support our Kubernetes migration efforts. So would love to get an overview on what we've learned about the virtual file server, whatever that is, and how that's going to shape our direction moving forward, and where we still intend, and for how long do we intend to still use the scalability team member.
Yeah.
I'll pass it over to you, Vlad.
Yeah. First of all, with the scalability, the main focus of the scalability team right now is on Couple and Puma, and that is what they kind of almost done with, I would say, at least half done, because a lot of merge requests has already been merged. With the main object storage effort, basically we had this push from the top at some point to reconsider using zip archives, which we've chosen a couple months back, and just use like direct, let's call it direct object storage method, when we just upload every single resource from the pages archive to a separate entity on the object storage. So how that actually unfolded. We had a very long meeting, with a lot of people a couple of weeks ago, and Jakob from the scalability team decided that he may start with the POC for the direct object storage approach. So he started it. It didn't took very long from him, like a few days, I would say. And one nice idea, like basically what we were doing before with the object storage effort, we were like re-implementing part of the pages logic to work with the object storage or some underlying storage. But yeah, and the plan and Jaime's current proposal was to basically re-implement some of this code. What Jakob did was a little different. Basically, he abstracted away the file system level to a separate entity, which can be like accessed as a file system, which can be accessed as object storage, direct object storage way, or zip archive. It doesn't really matter there. But it's might be a little easier for direct object storage, but whatever. So when we were reading it, I realized that, yeah, this is like a great idea. We need to do this virtual file system layer, regardless of the approach we will take. And we had last week with Jaime, we were discussing that, like which approach we should take. And the last week, because Jaime's POC wasn't really fully functional versus Jakob's POC, and because there was some other unknowns there with the zip archives, we decided that probably, like we were regretting a lot that we give up all these benefits from the zip archives, which allows much easier management of the projects, and basically we don't need to unzip anything. We just push single file, remove single file, just give pages a link to a single file. That simplifies a lot of things, and we can also remove some code from pages. We hold this JLink, if you remember. it was causing some issues recently. Yeah, so, but yeah, we decided that probably this direct object storage is a safer method, even though it's more complex, but at that point of time, there were less unknowns in there. But we kind of left ourselves a room. We knew that Camille will be back this Monday. So we kind of made a decision that, yeah, we looking this way, but let's wait for Camille. Let's see what he has to say. So yeah, Camille is got back Monday and basically asked for how we were doing, and yeah, he also liked a lot with this virtual file system idea, which was like what Jakob did was actually already merged by then. So he started improving it to abstract like another layer, which I'm like I won't go into details, but yeah, and then building a zip on top of this virtual file system. So today we basically have a working POC from Camille for the zip archive. And we just had a meeting like half an hour ago, finished the meeting with Jakob, Camille, Grzegorz, Nicole, Rachel, and me.
Can I get a recording of that?
Yeah, I'll post it. I'll post the like final summary and the recording today, like right after this meeting.
Okay, that'd be helpful. And if I can get included on those meetings in the future, that'd be great, because typically I'm the person that gets pulled in front of customers for this topic.
So that was a technical discussion. We were trying to make a final decision there, but this
Totally okay.
What Vlad just gave you was super cliff notes of that whole meeting. So yeah, it really just outlined everything that he went through. But it is recorded, so we can share.
Yeah, so sorry for not including you. I'll make sure to invite you next time.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we kind of, today we were like, basically Jakob was convinced. He also tried to implement zip himself. And what he said is that, yeah, both approaches working, and it's not more complex to implement zip than direct object storage. And since me and Camille leaning towards the objects, towards the zip archives, because it's easier to manage data this way, we decided that, yeah, we're going to this direction. So our current plan, basically I will outline it tomorrow and break down into issues, but the main idea is to get something in the production working on the this zip architecture as soon as possible. And we were discussing, maybe we will start with some other project, but we were discussing actually, we were discussing starting with docs GitLab.com, because it's a big enough project with a lot of traffic, also with a big zip archive, and like the size of the zip archive kind of matters for the performance. I mean, for evaluating if all our performance hacks actually work as we expect, and they work locally, but it would be nice to make sure in production that everything works as we expected. So yeah, this is like the main first step. The second one probably will be to outline the migration for the .com, because it's most likely it will be the single most time-consuming piece of work. And I haven't created it, but this I probably should include both of you, Nicole and Jackie. Camille also suggested that we go through the timeline and outline everything, like when we will have this working, well, we have next step working and all that. So we decided that we kind of start this discussion asynchronously. So yeah, my plan for tomorrow is to create all these issues, write some comments. I'll ping you all there. But yeah, then we'll probably want to schedule a meeting and go over it one more time. So I guess that's what I had to say.
So just to add to that, just to make it clear, so the zip archive was the direction we had stubbed out weeks ago, and the issues and epics that are existing there show that. We were just asked to kind of evaluate and make sure that was the right direction, and so we've accomplished that, and through that we came out with this extra layer, which is the abstraction into the virtual file system, which is fantastic. So we'll need to do some updating to make sure that those issues and epics accurately reflect, you know, having to build the zip archive method on top of the VFS. That piece wasn't there before. But in terms of everything else that Vlad mentioned, the epic for the migration plan is there, it's just empty. So now it's time, now that we have that final technical piece, we can start stepping out that outline, which is what we intend to do next. So I just wanted to kind of make sure it was clear that that actually was our original direction. We've just kind of added some details there that were missing.
Okay. So to repeat back what I've heard in a short, succinct way, we went through a path of evaluating a virtual file system to abstract some of the work that we were looking to just implement zip archive for. And now we're going to go forward with the virtual file system, and we'll layer on top of it our original direction for the zip archive for pages. And this will allow us to reduce some of the rework we were initially going to be doing on the pages side. So we're reducing the work that we have to do in pages and supporting more, hopefully, efficient file serving.
Yeah, and we have, and some of that work for the VFS was already done and merged by Jakob. So we'll just be doing some additional polish there and getting that, fine tuning it to work with the zip approach.
Okay, perfect. So then after the VFS and the zip archive work is done, we'll have this migration path forward, which will be the long tail of this project, where we're actually migrating GitLab.com onto this new method of serving files to pages using both the VFS abstraction layer and zipping those files with our archive method. And we will then have to do, after the migration completion's done, like a cleanup of pages code, I'm assuming. Like there will be like refactoring needed after that. But that can be done like at any time? Or...
Yeah, I guess like we will certainly do some cleaning up while we're working on it, but I would say that like the biggest cleanup should be done, I don't know, in the middle of the next year or something like that, when we have everything deployed, when we have, again, I'm not sure if we will have object storage as a default method for the 14.0, right? So we probably can deprecate it only in 15.0 if we...
Perfect. That's, you read my mind on where I was getting at, so thank you. Oh, you're so good, Vlad. You're like already ahead of me.
Yeah, and just to go back a little, this, like Jakob's and Camille help was actually very, very helpful, because before that we were thinking how we will implement all this. And now, like Jakob's idea was great. It simplified the whole re-architecture for zip a lot. And Camille already built basically working POC on top of it. So currently what we need to do is just basically take this, get it to a mergeable state, merge it. And yeah, I guess even like we spent a few weeks iterating there, but I think it saved us more time than it took us.
Yeah, because initially we thought that instrumenting the zip archive would take a long time to optimize, right? And it would take a long time to get to a place where we think it would be able to handle performance. I like, at least that's what I recall from our first conversations back in February. So it sounds like the brunt of the lifting that we initially thought would be on the zip archive side will actually be instrumented by the VFS.
Not really. It should be done on zip, but Camille kind of have done already half of it, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, but there was actually another problem. We were re-implementing how pages were serving files, and VFS actually abstracted this away. So now we can just reuse code we already had. So
that's the part that we're really saving cruft from, is not having to re-instrument. Okay, got it. I think I said that earlier, but that kind of sinks in a little bit deeper. Thank you. Okay. And then for self-managed customers, their experience will be like they can opt into this when it's available, and then in 15.0 it'll be a default experience for all customers, zip archive object storage, or
I would say on that? Okay. That's the idea, but currently we haven't started thinking about self-managed. We're mostly thinking about migrating the .com as soon as possible.
Which I think is the right priority. I was just more thinking ahead of, given that the mass of our customers are self-managed, how this is going to impact that install base, and that we're not thinking of instrumenting something that will only work on .com. So just checking on
it will work across the board, I think. To both of your points, it's going to take a little bit more thought though. So that'll definitely be a first step, is the .com portion, and then we can think a little more detail about the self-managed piece. Just to kind of highlight one of the things Vlad already mentioned, but I think it's worth reiterating, is that, so we have this POC from Camille, we have the VFS layer that was implemented by Jacob. So the good news is, even though this took a bit of time, a good chunk of the work is there, and we just need to get it in a mergeable state. The next big piece there will be taking a real life project, which, like was mentioned, docs.gitlab.com is a great example, getting that deployed in a maybe not perfect state, but just getting it working and deployed so that we can flush out bugs. And that'll give us a really great idea of what the migration would require. And that'll help us to stub out that, flush out that migration plan a little bit better. So that, just wanted to highlight that as once we kind of get this in a mergeable state, that's kind of a good next step that'll help us clear up any unknowns. Because the migration piece, as we kind of learned in the past, that's always a very complex piece. And this will kind of help us flush out those details.
When we did the API rollout, Vlad, where did we test that originally? On .com?
We started testing on the staging. Then on .com, we created a few projects for different cases, how API works, about 4 of them, I guess. So we enabled this for these 4 projects, tested that everything works fine. And then we just started enabling it for the percentage of users. So no, there were no idea. Huh?
I remember the incremental rollout and that we kept hitting clicks, but so that's, I just wanted to see like how much of this do we already understand from the API rollout, or is it going to be a completely new implementation from like a migration path? Like there really isn't going to be, there's going to still be a bunch of unknowns for it.
I hope this migration, like the rollout part, will be a little easier, because we didn't have a feature flag mechanism for pages at the moment. So we implemented not very efficient way when we needed to contact SREs every time we need to change something. Now, when everything controlled through this API, we can actually just leverage feature flags we already have. So any developer can flick them at will. So it will be easier this way. But there is a little, like with the current, with the zip archives and any object storage, there is actually two pieces. First is the migration of data to the object storage, and the second is rollout. So we can do those two simultaneously, probably somehow. I don't know yet. Like I haven't thought of the way to do so, but yeah, I mean, it's a little simpler at some point, and it's probably more complex at the other, because basically it's two stages instead of one rollout, one for data and one for actual serving.
Okay, so the rollout, the mechanism versus the rollout of the data. Okay, being two separate components of the migration.
And the good news is, because it's a sizable site, like I think 25,000 files and then roughly 700 megs, it'll give us a really great real world example of what we'll be getting into when we start the .com migration.
Yeah, and we probably will need to add more sites, because like one of the concerns with any approach is memory consumption of the pages daemon. So on one website, it may work fine without any noticeable difference. But yeah, once we start adding more, especially if we start to add more like bigger sites with comparable to docs.com, then we can see the huge increase in memory, especially if something will be leaking, which is possible. So yeah, that's, I don't know. I'm just trying to say that, yeah, there is
there's risk
foreseen.
There.
Yeah.
I gotcha. All right, perfect. So to recap some actions I heard earlier, Vlad, you'll post the outline of our next steps and recording of the meeting with Camille and Jakob that happened earlier. And then you're going to work on some issues about adding the abstraction layer and how that impacts the zip archive. And then from what Nicole said, it sounds like some of our existing scope needs to get updated with that information as well. Is that right? Okay.
That's right. Can I just want to add one thing there that's probably interesting or of importance to you, Jackie, is that there was a conversation around range requests. And so initially that with the zip approach, those will not be supported. The impact of that, it was agreed, is small, because we don't necessarily have data to know where that would actually impact the page's customers. And for example, that would be used for like, if they're doing a lot of video playback on their sites, etc. So that can definitely be done as a separate iteration that will come later. And that will kind of help us determine as well how many customers would be impacted by that. But the overall consensus was that was generally low and not a huge deal to add as a separate iteration. As well as, I'm sorry, did you want to?
Yeah, let's go ahead and create the issues for that. So when we do start rolling this out as like an opt-in thing, if people want to upvote it or start providing some experience, like the best thing that we can do is have a place for the TAMs to then link their accounts that are impacted by this. So if we can create those issues as a part of the scope, and we won't schedule them or do them until you know, we get the demand that we need for them, but just to have them available will be good.
Yeah, and we'll make that clear, Vlad, that that's not part of the MVC, but a separate iteration, as well as the geo support. Jackie is another one that will need to be kind of called out as a separate iteration as well.
What's really good with geo, Fabian and I talked a little bit about this at length, is that our prescription is that we'll just redeploy pages sites for customers and not have to worry about serving them from object storage. So I'm not sure if we even really need to go down that path of having object storage supported in a geo way. Of course, we'll create the issues, and if they get upvoted heavily, or if there's requirements like from like GitLab.com, if we decide to create different .com instances across the globe, we might need to create separate object storages for different .com instances. Not sure how that like shakes out technically, but Fabi and I have definitely talked about this a lot, the Geo product manager, so that we're not blocking Geo as far as them being able to go to market, but they'll create the issues, get them uploaded. And then I think the biggest thing is if we do instrument.com in other locations, we might have to see how that impacts how we support object storage.
Great.
Yeah, and with the range requests, going back a little, the idea was that we will start rolling out zip to actual users on .com and see if anyone complains. Kind of a hard way to.
I like that approach, because then it's like a fail fast kind of thing. You find out immediately how crappy this is for users.
Yeah, and we can implement it if it is required. Yeah.
Yeah, but like we were saying, the overall consensus would be that most users would not be impacted, but it will definitely allow us to find out how many would be impacted.
Okay, I know that we're 1 minute over time. Thank you all so much for breaking this down for me. I really appreciate it. I look forward to learning about the technical discussion. I know that with both release generation and the release CLI, Camille's opinions and thoughts really shape how we want to instrument something. So it's good that we're having those discussions so early in our path. Thank you all for owning this and really taking it forward. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks.